Woohoo!
Let's talk about explicitly taking control of consciousness, right? Like, let's say you're like, you're playing sports or you're playing a video game or something, and you're like, you make a mistake or you get killed in the game or whatever. You're like, and then you're like, all right, focus. Let's buckle down.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you can do that.
Yeah.
Right? Like, talk to me about that.
That's you trying to get in the zone where you're trying to be like really focused on something and like putting your 100% in. And it does normally occur after a sort of failure where you feel like you're not putting enough of your effort into doing the thing. And so you're sort of like taking control of your consciousness in that way, because you might normally be like thinking about something else and then also doing something else and then also like maybe thinking about a third thing. But when you're becoming aware that you want to be focused in that way, you almost like gather together all your thoughts, like all your processes, and you move them into like one big thing, and then you just push forward on that thing. And you might not like stay in control of that for very long, or you might like go into the zone and like be really focused for like a while, depending on how it goes. But either way, in that moment, you are sort of like kind of like becoming aware of your own consciousness and how it works, becoming self-conscious, and then taking that all together and focusing on like one thing.
Yeah, it's almost like rallying all of your mental resources into one specific problem or event.
Yeah, exactly.
And I guess we don't have to talk about whether this is an unconscious or conscious process.
No,
this feels pretty conscious.
It's very intentional.
But it doesn't last, the intentionality doesn't seem like it's hard to maintain that intentionality.
No, and that's for multiple reasons, because it's just like, it's hard to just like focus on being focused for a while. And because when you're doing that like rallying together, it's for a goal, it's for a task, it's for like a game or whatever that you want to win. So the act in itself diverts your focus away from that act.
Or yourself.
From yourself, because now you're focused on this new thing.
Yeah.
And that focus might remain, it might stray, but either way, because you're consciously focusing on this thing, you're no longer consciously focusing on the act of consciously focusing.
See how weird philosophy sounds sometimes? Take that out of context and see if anyone could parse what you just meant. And I guess I could see an AI doing that too, right? Like, if it has a limited processing power and it's kind of multi-processing, different things, and it's like a super hard computational problem where it's got to put all of its resources.
Yeah, putting all your processing power into something doesn't seem like that unique.
No, it doesn't sound very magical. Let's talk about a different way of intentionally focusing yourself. Something along the lines of meditation, where you kind of normally allow the thoughts just kind of to, float a little bit, and all of a sudden you're like, all right, I'm going to put myself in an intentional state of whatever your meditative practice might be about.
Yeah, I'd say that when you're meditating, it's obviously you're focused on the act of meditation, but because meditation isn't in itself so like internal and focused on thinking, you're not really fully diverting your attention away from like the act of focusing or the act of gathering your brain power together, because that's sort of like what it's about.
To some degree, and I think there's and you don't do a lot of meditation. I have done meditation. I'm not actively practicing now. But really, I feel like people think that meditating is focusing really hard on something. I really feel like meditation is almost letting go, an intentional letting go, and allowing the external to come in, to allow the mind to roam freely without judging. It's almost an intentional defocusing, which is interesting, it's kind of the opposite of that gaming scenario.
Yeah.
Where you're too focused on something. It's like a letting go. Could a machine get into that kind of state?
Probably wouldn't. The whole point of a machine is to complete tasks. So to like consciously focus on not doing that sort of seems counterintuitive, because it would be to focus on itself to fix a problem, or to focus on one specific thing, or to sort of like focus on multiple things at once seems natural. But to consciously try not to do anything at all doesn't seem like something a machine would choose to do unless it was shut down, which wouldn't be conscious at all.
Yeah, I mean, once again, I feel like we're getting kind of a slightly advanced concept. It's kind of a weird one. It's a unique. It feels like a human problem that we have. Like we're always like focused on something, or you're internally suffering from something, and then you just gotta like be like I gotta let this go. I gotta get into a state and just allow things to come to me.
But
I don't know. Don't know how an AI would get into that kind of conundrum necessarily.
yeah, I don't think it would have. It's not necessarily that it would be unable to. It's just that it wouldn't have a reason to, and so it wouldn't.
10 years from now, this self-obsessed AI is like, yeah, you guys were wrong about that.
Yeah, but it's hard. It's hard to talk about AI in this way because it challenges the idea of what AI is at all.
Yeah.
When most people think about AI, they either think of like ChatGPT or whatever, or they think about like the science fiction concept of AI, where the artificial intelligence is essentially just like a human consciousness,
Yeah.
like in a robot.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, in order to really discuss what that AI would be able to complete, it's like you need to decide what you're focusing on, like whether this is like a robot that's like meant to complete tasks, or if it's something that's like meant to like have a consciousness of its own, like what consciousness means. The whole point of what consciousness means, but it's hard to, when you get into things like meditation, because it's like you question things like, would that AI's purpose be just to complete tasks? Would it have a reason for that? Or would it be more human than we're predicting right now? Because it's like maybe like the purpose of a robot is not necessarily to do something specifically, but rather to like science's attempt to create a human consciousness in a robotic mind. In which case, it seems logical that it would have need for meditation, and whether that's possible.
I think that we're beginning to get to a deeply philosophical point, which is, are some of these things inherent to consciousness itself? Do you know what I mean? So if you made something able to focus and conscious and whatever, would it need to take these moments to disentangle itself from its environment?
Or would you even be capable of creating like something that's able to replicate consciousness that way?
Yeah. Is that necessary, and is it still conscious? I think so, right? But I guess my point is though, like I don't think moving from being focused externally or driven by some particular thing and then like defocusing is particularly magical, right? You may ask why an AI would need to do that or want to do that.
Yeah.
But I don't think you could be like there's no way a machine could ever do that. Yeah. That's crazy.
And once again, we get into like sort of the emotional concept behind this, because obviously for people, it's like a very emotional idea of meditation. But for an AI, you'd have to question, does this really count in that way? Or is it just more like the projection of something doing something? Like, is it any more real, like we were constantly the concept of like realness. Is it any more real for the AI to do this than it would be for some animation to act out?
But I think even with these shifting of modes, we've been through a few of these, right? It doesn't feel like there's anything super magical or, mysterious or that couldn't be part of a machine's experience.
I think like the concepts in themselves are not necessarily complicated or impossible at all for a machine to recreate. It's just like when we get into the philosophy of like what those actions mean and why we're doing like the point of them and what they lead to, and like thought by thought, emotion by emotion process of them. It's like, sure, an AI could focus on something, but what would that mean for it versus for us? Because it doesn't seem like it would be the exact same process.
And then on the other part that we've been discussing about these various mode changes, in general, it seems like we go throughout our day with our modes of consciousness changing without our intent. Like, it's unusual to be like, okay, focus.
Yeah.
And you can't even do it very long. And it's unusual to be like, okay, I'm getting into a deep meditative state. Those are things that human beings in our consciousness, we don't do very often.
It's like we said before, consciousness is more like an act of like subroutines in the mind, where it's like you're focusing on what's most relevant to you right now.
Yeah, and what's relevant isn't a choice. It's a combination of external sensory things and the internal logic of our own brain processes.
Yeah, it's like the eyes filtering out what's in the background. It's just like you're not actively choosing not to look at that. You're just looking at what's important. We hope that you enjoyed that video, and if you did, please consider checking out the next one in the series.
Or some of our other series on philosophy and life.
We upload videos every Friday, so don't forget to like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe. See you next week.